Welcome everyone. Thank you for your patience. I do believe we have all registered attendees participating now. I do apologize for the delay. I do also want to start by thanking you for your interest in this municipal class environmental assessment project for the rehabilitation of the 15th Side Road West, 10th concession and 8th concession. My name is Tammy Kalamutu. I am with the Ainley Group. I will be guiding you through this virtual PIC today. I am joined by 3 other members of the project team, Steve Fournier and Jody Marks, also of Ainley Group, as well as Wayne Pinckney of the Township of King. As I take you through this presentation, they will be working in the background to field your questions and provide responses. I also understand that we have some members of council in attendance today. I would like to take the opportunity to thank them for their time and for their participation. Before we get too far into the presentation, I would like to take a moment to highlight a few key items. First of all, this presentation is being recorded and it will be made available to the public via the township's website. So any questions, comments, or discussions that occur during this presentation will be public. If you do have any specific concerns that you would rather discuss with the team privately, you can make a note of that when you submit your question to the team, or please note that there are other methods of communicating with us, which we'll discuss again later, but that includes submitting comments directly to the township or to the team via email or contacting them via telephone. Please note that the format of this presentation is a live broadcast. This means that as presenters, we're broadcasting information to you as attendees, but we cannot see or hear you. The only method of communicating with us throughout this presentation will be to submit written questions. To do this, you'll need to locate the image of a chat box with a question mark on it at the top right corner of your screen. It should be beside what looks like a gear symbol or your settings symbol. When you click on the chat box with a question mark, when you click on the chat box, a screen will appear with an option at the bottom to ask a question. If you click on Ask a Question, it will open another screen where you can type your name and your question or comment and then submit it to the team using the arrow or the symbol that looks like a paper airplane. Once you've submitted your questions, as I mentioned earlier, the project team will be working in the background, collecting the questions and preparing answers. And then we have planned checkpoints throughout the presentation where we will stop and go through them. Please rest assured that any questions or comments you are submitting are being received and reviewed. During the checkpoints, if you have supplemental or additional questions, you can feel free to submit those to us using the same method. I do just want to note that there is a 20 to 30 second delay between when you submit a question and when it may appear that we've received your question and provide a response. So please be patient. Lastly, I would also like to note that the presentation boards for this PIC have been somewhat simplified to fit the content of the screen and not to appear to be too busy. A detailed version of the PIC boards will also be available for viewing on the township's website after this PIC. So if you go to the same location that you went to register for this PIC, you will find that information there. The presentation will generally follow this agenda. We will start by providing you with a summary of the project area, the background, and the purpose. We will provide a brief overview of the Class EA process, describe the existing conditions within the study area and any deficiencies that were identified. We'll explain the alternative solutions that have been considered and how we've evaluated those alternatives and compared them to one another. And we'll let you know the preliminary recommended solution that has been identified. Finally, we'll conclude with some of the next steps that will be taken to complete the project. And again, there will be another opportunity for final comment. We have divided the presentation by road segment. So following this introduction, we will be going through each road segment individually. If you're interested in hearing about a specific section of the project, you can do so and then leave at any point in time during the presentation. Or of course, you are welcome to listen to the entire presentation. So the study area for the Class EA includes the 15th Side Road West from Highway 27 to 10th concession. It also includes 10th concession between the 15th Side Road and King Road, as well as the 8th concession between 15 Side Road and King Road, all around the community of Nobleton. These three road segments have been noted to have a deteriorated pavement structure, and deficiencies have been identified with cross-section elements such as shoulder width clear zone, the vertical alignment, and some drainage. Initially, the township commenced a preliminary design process for the reconstruction of these roads to address the issues, but once the design had progressed, it became apparent that in order to proceed, a municipal Class A process should be commenced. The Municipal Class A process was developed by the Municipal Engineers Association to provide municipalities with a risk-based approach to comply with the Environmental Assessment Act for both capital projects and infrastructure maintenance activities. So in this process, projects are categorized into schedules. And those schedules are based upon the project complexity, the anticipated potential for impacts to the environment. And projects that fall into what is called a Schedule A or an A prime category are generally considered to be pre-approved and can proceed without any formal Municipal Class A consultation process. Projects that fall into an elevated level, what we call a Schedule B or a Schedule C, require the completion of a formal process that includes various stages of consultation with the public, potential stakeholders, and agencies. Road reconstruction projects generally tend to fall into the pre-approved Schedule A prime category if those roads will be reconstructed for the same purpose, use, and capacity, as well as at the same location as the existing roads. Where this is not the case, the project then has to fulfill a higher level of Schedule EA. In the case of this project, while the road will still be for the same purpose, use, and capacity, it was determined that right-of-way constraints and topography prevented challenges which would make the required improvements, which would necessitate property to make the required road improvements. So as a result, the decision was made to initiate a Schedule B Class A process. And for this type of categorized activity, we are required to complete phases 1 and 2 of the process, which is on your screen right now. And that includes the identification of the problem, the identification of alternative solutions to that problem, evaluation of those alternatives, and selection of a preferred alternative. And of course, one of the main components of the Class A process is consultation, which is why we're here today. Part of the process is to consult with review agencies, stakeholders, and members of the public to explain what we're doing, to explain the project, and obtain input and feedback. So, in general, this slide represents the existing conditions for the 3 segments of road. And in general, I'd like to note that they are fairly similar. The average lane and shoulder widths are approximately 3.2 meters and 0.5 meters, neither of which comply with township standards. There are areas where the side slopes and back slopes of the ditches are quite steep. The pavement structure does not meet the minimum township standard. There are areas where the road profile is quite steep, sight lines are limited, and there are also areas with drainage issues and concerns. One of the other identified deficiencies is the clear zone requirements and how these are not met. And just to provide you with some clarification, the clear zone refers to the area that's adjacent to the traveled lane, and it should be free of any obstructions so that it is traversable and can be used in the event that a vehicle leaves the roadway. So it's there to provide the driver with the opportunity to stop safely or regain control if their vehicle leaves the roadway. And there are many factors that go into determining the minimum width of that clear zone, and those include traffic volume, speed, and the side slopes and back slopes of the ditches that I was speaking about earlier. In general, the 3 road segments are considered to be low volume roads. The average traffic volume is in the range of 200 to 1,000 vehicles per day, which is well within the capacity of a 2-lane road. Since this project was initiated, the township has completed an updated transportation master plan, which concluded that for at least the next 10-year horizon, these roads can continue to operate satisfactorily as a 2-lane road, and there's been no need identified either through this project or through the transportation master plan to add capacity by increasing the lanes on these roads at this point in time. There was some mention, I believe, in the TMP of looking at the potential to upload these roads to the region at some point in the future, but that is definitely outside of the scope and purpose of this project. And we do just want to note that any potential widening of the road in the future to add traffic capacity would have to go through another similar process whereby there would be additional studies and public consultation. However, that is not part of the scope of this project. So getting into the alternative solutions that were considered in order to address the deficiencies, the team came up with 4. And the first alternative in the Class EA process is always a do-nothing option. And this means exactly that. It means leave the roads as they are with no improvements. So the do-nothing option is always considered, and it's used as a benchmark to gauge the potential impacts of the other alternative solutions. The second alternative consists solely of a base and surface reconstruction, meaning that the road will be resurfaced to address pavement condition, but other deficiencies such as cross-section elements like the lane and shoulder widths we were speaking of a moment ago, side slopes, and clear zone requirements would not be improved. The third alternative involves a full reconstruction of the road with improvements to the cross-section to meet minimum standards, as well as some improvements to the road profile and sight lines, but only those which can be accommodated within the existing 20-meter right-of-way. And the last or fourth alternative involves the full reconstruction of the roads, including the improvements to the cross-section to meet the minimum standards, as well as significant improvements to the road profile in order to meet minimum requirements and improve those sight lines. However, under this alternative, to make those improvements, it has been identified that the right-of-way would have to be increased to 26 meters in order to permit that alternative to work. We will be going through the rationale momentarily for each of the road segments, but we did want to identify at the beginning that the preliminary preferred solution that the project team has identified is alternative 4. It does offer the opportunity to address the deficiencies without compromises. It would mean that the roads would be reconstructed to have 2 3.5 meter travel lanes, 1 meter gravel shoulder, and an additional 1.5 meters of paved shoulder on 15th side road to provide for active transportation. And it also means that the road profile would be improved to provide better sight lines, culverts would be replaced to help improve drainage, the side slopes and back slopes would be addressed, but again, in order to do so, additional property would be required. And so that additional 5 to 6 meters of property that would be necessary has been identified or proposed to be split between 2 sides of the road on the 8th concession and 15th side road, but is proposed to be taken solely from the east side of the road on 10th concession. And the reason behind that is to avoid constraints that are present on the west side, including a cemetery and some architectural fencing. Oh, I apologize. I forgot to note as well on the last slide that a key component for the 15th side road west reconstruction will be the realignment of the roadway near Highway 27 to create a cross intersection and eliminate the current offset intersection that occurs there. So at this point in time, we've taken you through the study area, through the project background, existing conditions, giving you some initial insight into the preliminary preferred alternative solution, and we're going to be diving into that a little bit more as we proceed. But we're going to take a moment to pause here at our first sort of question checkpoint. And at this time, we'll go through any of the questions that have come in. We'll provide responses. You do have the opportunity to submit supplemental questions. And then after this checkpoint, we'll again be going through each of the road segments individually, starting with 15th side road, then moving on to 10th, and then finally the 8th. We are going to have breaks for question checkpoints in between each of those segments. But again, at this point in time, I'm going to pause and I'm going to turn it over to Wayne, who's going to take us through any of the questions that have come in so far.
Perfect. Thank you, Tammy. So far, so good. I think there was some technical difficulties at the beginning, but I believe everything's up and running good now. One of the questions that was submitted And I've heard this question before about traffic signals at the 10th concession and the King Road. During the first PIC a couple years ago, I did approach the region, and it, currently was not in their 10-year capital plan to put that up there, to install any signals in that intersection. Again, once we get closer to construction and before we go to tender, again, I will reach out to the region to have that another discussion with them, because I know it is important to most people out there, and I like to see them put some signals in there. But at this point, it is the it's kind of the region working with us, and what Tammy did indicate that the traffic counts aren't quite there yet to warrant traffic signals, but I think in time there will be. And other questions were, hey, is this going to start? So basically we have started, and there really hasn't been any other questions that are made public to us at this point.
Okay, so do we want to move forward then?
Please move on. If you're okay, then let's move forward. Thanks, Tammy.